Hey guys, okay, this is going to be homework 7.1, which is in preparation for lesson 7.2. And what we're going to talk about today is kind of how to write the equation of something if we're given the factors and what the factors tell us about the equation. And we're going to do this for quadratics and other types of polynomials. So the first example we're going to look at is just a quadratic. Y equals x squared minus 5x minus 14. Okay, so if I factor this and I set it equal to 0, then that will help me find the roots. So if I factor this, I'm looking for two numbers that add to -5 and that multiply to -14. So those would be -7 and +2. So what this tells me is that must mean that the roots are x equals +7 and x equals -2. And furthermore, what that means is that that's where this specific parabola crosses the x-axis. So these are known as the roots or x-intercepts. Okay. So from here, let's take a look at a different problem where we're not going to actually factor to find the roots. We're going to use our graph. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to look at the equation y equals x squared minus 3x minus 10. And like I said, we're not actually going to factor, we're going to look at the graph. So we're going to plug this into our y equals in our calculator. And I'm going to bring up what my graph looks like here. Okay, so you can see my graph here. And now what I want to do is I want to look at the table so that I can tell where my x-intercepts are. And if you remember, the x-intercepts are where the y value is 0. So that's what I'm going to look at now. Okay, so from this, I can see that my y value is 0 at -2. My y value is 0 at 5. So those are my two places where my y value is 0. So that means that x equals -2 and x equals 5. So if we know that, then we can write the equation. So just like we did before, except now we're kind of working backwards. So if I know x is eventually going to equal -2 and x is going to equal 5, then that means that when y is 0, and if I were to factor this, I would have the two factors x plus 2 and x minus 5. And that's how we would have gotten from here to here, or vice versa. Okay, so let's look at another example where now we don't have a quadratic, meaning the highest degree power is not 2, it's actually going to be a cubic. So the highest degree power is going to be 3. Okay, so we're going to look at the second example, or third example. And this example is y equals x cubed plus 4x squared minus 11x minus 30. Okay, so again, we're going to put this into our y equals, and I'm going to show you what my graph looks like. So my calculator is a little bit different than yours, but it's really showing us the same thing. Okay, so here's my graph. So if you notice, it looks a little bit different than a parabola. It kind of goes up and down and up and down. And now I really want to focus on my table. So I'm going to go to my table, just like we did for the last one. And I'm going to look again on my table for specifically where the y value is 0. So I can see the y value is 0 at -5, the y value is 0 at -2, and the y value is 0 at 3. So those are my 3 roots, or x-intercepts. X equals -5, x equals -2, and x equals 3. So again, this is going to help us now write this equation in factored form if we needed to do that. So without factoring. So let's actually do that. Let's write this equation in factored form. So just like before, if I know that x minus 5 is a 0, then that means that one of the factors would have had to be x plus 5. If I know x equals -2 is a 0, then that means one of the factors would have had to be x plus 2. And if I know that x equals 3 is a 0, then the last factor is x minus 3. There we go. Okay, so this would be the equation written in factored form. Okay, we're going to do 2 more quick examples, and these 2 examples now are just if we're actually just given the roots, how we then go ahead and write the equation. So it's kind of like working backwards from what we've done before. Okay, so example number 4. Now we're given that the roots of the equation are x equals 4 and x equals -2. And from here we want to actually write the equation. So just like we did before, if the y value is 0, then that would mean that the 2 factors would have to be x minus 4 and x plus 2. And now if we want to write this in y equals form and in standard form, we would actually distribute this guy out. So I'm going to start with the first term in the first binomial, and I'm going to distribute it to the second binomial. So I get x squared, and then I'm going to continue distributing that term plus 2x. And then I'm going to take the second term in that first binomial and distribute it to the other binomial. So minus 4x and minus 8. Okay, now I'm just going to put everything together or combine like terms, and I get y equals x squared minus 2x minus 8. There's my equation, and it all came from just being given the factors, or the roots, I should say. Okay, so one more quick example. Our 5th and final example. So now if we're given 3 roots, x equals 1, x equals -2, and x equals 5, well, if I'm given 3 roots, I can kind of guess that maybe this is a cubic equation. So I'm going to write my 3 factors. X equals -1 means x minus 1 is a factor. X equals -2 means x plus 2 is a factor. And x equals 5 means x minus 5 is a factor. And now, again, if I want to write this cubic equation in standard form, then I'm going to multiply everything together. So here's where people get a little tripped up. So I'm going to show you how to do this nice and slow. So I first like to just multiply 2 of the first 2 binomials together. So that's what I'm going to do. X times x, x squared, x times 2 plus 2x. And -1 times x is just -x. -1 times 2 is -2. Now what I need to remember to do is this needs to stay in parentheses because I'm still multiplying this by x minus 5. That's usually the biggest mistake people make. Okay, so now I'm going to combine like terms in this first expression. So I get x squared plus x minus 2 times x minus 5. And then it's usually, I find, a little bit easier if I distribute the smaller expression into the bigger one. So I'm going to take the x minus 5 and I'm going to distribute that into the x squared plus x minus 2. Okay. So, like I said, I'm going to take this smaller guy and distribute it into the bigger guy. So I'm going to start with the x. X times x squared is x cubed. X times x is x squared. And x times negative 2 is negative 2x. And now I'm going to take the negative 5, and I'm going to distribute that guy. Negative 5 times x squared is negative 5x squared. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x. And negative 5 times negative 2 is plus 10. And now I just need to combine like terms. And something I actually should have been doing the whole time was setting this equal to either y or 0 for writing it as an equation. Then we should set it equal to y. Okay, so now let's combine like terms. So I can see there's an x squared and a minus 5x squared. So there's nothing to combine the x cubed with. So it becomes x cubed minus 4x squared. And then I also see that there is a minus 2x and a minus 5x. So that tells me this is going to become negative 7x. And then the plus 10 at the end equals y. And there is my equation. And we were able to find that, remember, by just being given the 3 roots of this equation. Okay, guys, that's all for now. Bye-bye.